Kopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Jaya Kopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Prajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Prajajana Ranjana Yamunatira Manachari Yamunatira Manachari. Jai Shila Prabhupada ki Jai. It's 8 o'clock, Prabhus.
Okay.
Thank you, Prabhu.
So,
Start, Prabhu. Thank you.
what's your format? If you can give me a little background before we begin.
So you can start discussing from either Bhagavad Gita or Srimad Bhagavatam or from Prabhupada Katha, for the Lord Krishna being in the center, how to keep. That is the topic, and then you can go on maybe till 7:40, 7:45, then question answers. So
Okay,
that is
very
the
good.
format. Yeah.
I see on the poster it said that Giriraj Maharaj was going to be on as well.
In the evening, that's at 8 to 9 in the evening. That means India time morning for you tomorrow.
Okay. I was hoping to get to see him as well. Okay, so the topic is keeping Krishna in the center, yeah?
Yes. Yes.
So I'll try and speak something about that. When I first joined the temple in Sydney in 1972, one of the devotees there was Upendra Prabhu. He was Prabhupada's servant, and he was also, along with Bali Mahadan, the founder, if you like, of ISKCON in Australia. He had gone there to join up with Bali Mahadan. They were the first two devotees to bring Krishna consciousness to Australia, and that, I guess it's Southeast Asian district. So Upendra Prabhu, he had joined, I think, in 1967. So he had stayed in Australia. Personally, I joined the Sydney Temple in February of 72. And as soon as I joined, we got the news that Prabhupada was going to be coming within a few weeks. So I was talking with Upendra one day, and he told me, actually, he said that there is a stage even higher than being Krishna conscious. And I couldn't think what that could be. I understood both from Prabhupada's books and other sources that Krishna was the supreme person. We were all parts and parcels. So to hear from Upendra that there was something higher than that, I couldn't figure it out. But he explained, he said, there's Krishna consciousness, and then there's Prabhupada consciousness. And Prabhupada consciousness is even higher than Krishna consciousness, or more important, because without Prabhupada, nobody could know who Krishna is. So when we discussed, it became clear to me that, Srila Prabhupada was an extraordinary person. In one sense, I understood that, but in another sense, I didn't. In the sense that Prabhupada had set the whole of ISKCON up. He had created all these temples. He had written so many books. I could understand, yes, this is, the center of our activities. When I joined, like many devotees in those days, I gave everything that I had to the temple. I'd been working for 6 months in the northwest of Australia, and I saved about $1,500, which is not much, but at that time, it was quite a bit of money. So when I joined the temple, I automatically gave whatever I had to the temple, my money, my clothes, everything. And so when I heard that Prabhupada was coming, I think I had some apprehension about that. In one sense, we were really ecstatic that Prabhupada was coming all the way to Australia. And that in itself was extraordinary. Prabhupada came to Australia every year for 6 years running. So although Australia appears a long way away from the rest of the world, at the same time, Prabhupada was coming there and spending at least 1 week every year in Australia. So that was a real boon for us. So when I heard that Prabhupada was coming, I was, as I say, a little apprehensive. From one side, there was a kind of, not fear, but apprehension, I would say, that whether Prabhupada would, turn out to be everything that we thought he was. We had BTG as our main source of literature in those days. There was always a class given by Srila Prabhupada as a leading article, and we would read those very avidly. And so there was a kind of an impression of Srila Prabhupada, the world or universal Acharya. He'd done so many things. So would he live up to our expectation? That was one, not fear, but it was one concern that I had. Would I actually, in seeing Srila Prabhupada in person, would I have my expectations or hopes fulfilled? So when Prabhupada came, it was actually what we experienced for that week that he stayed with us. It was something, as Upendra said, that was beyond even Krishna consciousness. We were Prabhupada conscious from morning till night, and even dreaming sometimes. So we were very impressed with Srila Prabhupada, just as a personality and as our guru, teaching us everything that we needed to know to go back home, back to Godhead. So that 1 week a year that we got with Prabhupada coming to Australia, it was enough to keep us going from 1 year to the next. Just a few days or a little bit of association with Prabhupada, we got such a boost in our Krishna consciousness that would keep us going enthusiastically, for the coming year's preaching. Of course, there were some people that didn't maintain their enthusiasm. Even there was one boy, well, in the Sydney temple at that time, there was about 10 or 12 devotees when I joined in mid-February. By the time Srila Prabhupada came on April the 1st, there were about 45 devotees. So within 6 weeks, we'd gone from about 10 or 12 devotees to about 45. It was quite phenomenal. Every day we would go out on Sankirtan chanting for 5 or 6 hours a day. And we come back to the temple in the evening, and generally we found, some new person waiting at the doorstep, so to speak, to come and join us. So it was a very exciting time, very dynamic. Everybody was working very hard. We were chanting in the main streets every single day. We were being harassed by the police and by the local councils, but we didn't stop. So we were doing all of that on the basis of what Srila Prabhupada had taught us and what he had shown in his own person, what Krishna consciousness actually is. So we had at least myself, I had an understanding that Krishna was everything and he was everywhere. He knew everything, omniscient, omnipotent, etc., and eternal. But of course, I didn't have any direct experience of being with Krishna, if you like. I understood it intellectually, but at least to the point where I was willing to join the temple and give away all my so-called belongings. But it wasn't exactly the same as, being with Krishna and engaging in his, pastime, so to speak. But when Srila Prabhupada came, then we could see him, we could talk with him, we could walk with him, we could hear his lectures and ask questions and answers to puzzles that we might have. So in that sense, being with Prabhupada or seeing Prabhupada in person, that was even higher than Krishna consciousness. So Upendra, as it happens, he had joined, as I say, in 1967. He had had 2 or 3 different periods when he traveled with Prabhupada, and he was Srila Prabhupada's personal servant in the last 8 months of Prabhupada's stay with us. So I owe him a lot. He left his body in the 1990s, but we remained friends all the way through from when I joined. And we had been together in 1975 after the opening of the Krishna Balaram temple. Then Upendra was there traveling with Prabhupada at that time. And when Prabhupada came there in 1975 for the Janmashtami, Upendra was on his party, and he came and stayed in the Krishna Balaram Mandir for a few months before going off to Fiji to preach. So Prabhupada was there, and it was, looking back now, really an extraordinary period. How we had a really diverse bunch of people living in the temples. As I say, I had given up everything to join and become a full-time devotee. Many others did the same thing, and it was all on this spiritual energy that lifted us up and drove us forward, because we were very strict, I think is the right word, about carrying forward Prabhupada's mission. We all had our ideas about how to do that, but the temple provided a format where many different types of personalities who you would never usually associate with, we put all of the external identities aside, and we got inspired by the idea that we're eternal spirit souls, part and parcel of the Supreme Spirit Soul, and that everything that we did should be centered around that understanding, that I'm not this body, that I'm part and parcel of Krishna. So I don't know what I was going to say. Upendra Prabhu, many others, they had pushed Krishna consciousness forward. As I say, he and Bali Madan had come to Australia, I think at the end of 1969. No devotees had been there up until that time, so he got the credit for establishing Krishna consciousness in Australia. But the main thing is that you've got as a title here, keeping Prabhupada in the center. So to do that, one had to fully dedicate. You can't keep Prabhupada in the center, Krishna or Prabhupada in the center, unless you're actually following their instructions. One time in Hawaii, there was some discussion about a group that had actually broken away from ISKCON, and the leader of that group lived in Hawaii. He was initiated and a sannyasi, and he had come to visit a couple of times when Prabhupada was there, but he had his own idea about how to spread Krishna consciousness, and he didn't want to follow exactly what Prabhupada was advocating. So his group were always kind of a little inimical towards our ISKCON camp. And when he came to see Prabhupada, he had this separatist kind of mentality. So, and they also had their own opinions about certain regulative principles that we were supposed to follow, but they struggled with, intoxication, illicit sex. They were just into this idea that Krishna is everything. We're part of Krishna. All we have to do is to chant the Hare Krishna mantra, and that's it. It's as easy as that. That Krishna will somehow or another take care of everything for them. So that kind of faulty mentality, Prabhupada commented that if one is not following the principles that we've given, then how can he claim to be my disciple? Some people would say, well, I'm initiated by Prabhupada. I don't need to join the temple. I don't need to work under the ISKCON authorities. And when that was reported to Prabhupada, he said, well, then how he can claim to be my disciple? Disciple means discipline. It means when the Guru speaks and asks you to do something, then you do it, even if you don't agree with it or don't like it, but you have to do it. That means, to me, I think the main point of keeping Prabhupada or Krishna in the center, you actually have to follow. There's no question of, claiming discipleship unless there's the discipline of, practical service and avoiding all the negative things which would cover up our consciousness. So, Prabhupada was very strict on one sense. He was very liberal in another sense. He was strict in at least preaching to us that we should follow these principles very carefully, and we should work as hard as we can within whatever capacity Krishna had given us. Everybody's got a particular kind of body, a particular kind of mind, and we see the disparity in human society because that individuality is not sometimes dovetailed with others of a like mind. So Prabhupada liked this idea of dovetailing, how we can be different, but when we join together on a common cause or common activities, then we get some success. So Prabhupada was very pleased on the whole, I think, with the growth of ISKCON. By the time we came to Mayapur in 1977, we had 108 temples. Prabhupada had about 5,000 disciples, and about 60 books had already been published. So it was like a resounding success story that was practically unrepeatable. There was one time, maybe 10 to 20, 15 years ago, there was a meeting of the American Academy of Religions, the AAR. They met once every year, and sometimes our devotees would go and attend those meetings. So one professor, I forget his name now, but he got up and he told the audience, and especially the devotees, he said, actually, you Hare Krishnas, you don't really understand what Prabhupada has done for you. So the devotees that were there, I wasn't there, I heard this, but the devotees were thinking, what does he mean? We're the ones that gave everything up to join Prabhupada's ISKCON party. How can he say that we don't understand? I mean, the implication is that then this scholar, maybe he thinks that he knows more about Krishna than Prabhupada or something like that. So his meaning actually was quite different. What he said, he qualified it. First of all, he said, you don't really understand what Prabhupada did for you. But he said, you won't understand until you're 70 years old and you have to go out and preach and start something from nothing. So that's what your guru did, what Prabhupada did. He had absolutely nothing. And at 70 years old, when most men are retiring, and of course nowadays we've just hit the time. I was 70 myself last week, and I sure don't feel like going out, with no help, no money to a foreign country and just sitting there and chanting and expecting to have some success from that. And most of Prabhupada's disciples now are in their last decade. from 70 to 80. Some of them are even older than 80 years now. So it's been a remarkable development over such a short period. We were all young men. I was 21 when I joined the temple. Now I'm 70. So for many of us, that's been our whole lifetime. We had some kind of an upbringing, but the real thing was that when we were born into the Krishna consciousness movement with Prabhupada as our father and guru. So we have to keep what Prabhupada gave us as carefully as you would, a handful of eggs, if that's a good analogy. I suppose it's not for the devotees, but we had to keep Prabhupada. We know that we must keep Prabhupada at the center. All of us diverse personalities from diverse backgrounds, but how can a person from Japan, from Russia, from South America, from Africa, from Europe, all these different cultures are there, but Prabhupada found a way of, keeping everybody together, and building like a family of devotees who would work cooperatively together and push the Krishna consciousness movement further and further all over the world. So our whole lives, in that sense, belong to Srila Prabhupada and to Krishna. We don't have any other business except trying to follow their instructions in one way or another. So keeping Krishna in the center means for us in ISKCON keeping Srila Prabhupada in the center. If Prabhupada is pleased, then Krishna's pleased. But one devotee once wrote to Prabhupada and asked him, how do we know if Krishna is pleased with our service? And Prabhupada wrote back, he said, if the Guru, spiritual master, if he is pleased, then Krishna is pleased. So Prabhupada is our link, our unifying factor in the growth and development of the Krishna consciousness movement. And we've seen over the years that when devotees have left, due to whatever reason, disgruntlement, envy, laziness, so something other than Krishna consciousness. But sometimes when people have left, even big so-called sannyasis or temple presidents or whatever, when they've left, they've struggled. They have not been able to go beyond what ISKCON provides in all the different aspects of human life and spiritual development. So generally speaking, after leaving ISKCON, they fade out. So we have to keep up the spirit of cooperation between us, and that will please Srila Prabhupada. There was in 1976, or 75, 76, there was a book distribution party in America, the Radha Damodar Traveling Sankirtan Party, and it was comprised of about 120 or 130 brahmacharis, all young men, in our early 20s. And they had 7 Greyhound buses that were crisscrossing America, and they were distributing a phenomenal amount of books and collecting huge amounts of money for Mayapur and, keeping the BBT running, etc. So they were very, very successful, but unfortunately some conflict arose because whenever a Radha Damodar bus came into a particular city, then naturally the local devotees, especially the brahmacharis, would become attracted by that. A life on the road, it's very exciting, a new city every day, no question of being bored. And they were very highly disciplined because they were being led by one of our best sannyasis at that time, Tamal Krishna Goswami. And he was very, very strict. But because he was strict, then, there was this mood like we're an army, Prabhupada's army, and we're going out to defeat Maya by distributing Prabhupada's books. So this discontent started to come because the Radha Damodar boys were basically, taking men from temples. Those temples would start to struggle because they'd lost their key Sankirtan people. And so there was some conflict arising between the temple presidents, who were mainly grihastas, and the sannyasis headed up by Tamal Krishna Maharaj. So that was kind of on the boil throughout 1975. And at one point, the conflict became so acrimonious that Tamal Krishna actually flew from America to see Prabhupada in Vrindavan to complain about why the temples were not allowing the Radha Damodar boys to come, into the temple or to distribute books in their cities. So he stayed one day. He spoke with Srila Prabhupada, and then he went back. And Prabhupada's comment at that time was, just see, he's spent so much money flying here and there just to come and complain about a bunch of householders. So Prabhupada didn't really much appreciate it, but he didn't get directly involved until a few months later at 1976 at the Gaurpurnima festival. So when everybody had gathered for the GBC meetings and then the festival, then there were many temple presidents that had come, and there was some complaints that were lodged against Tamal in particular, and other sannyasis that were, kind of bolstering him and his arguments. So they had the GBC meetings, and they passed a number of what you call resolutions, saying basically no householder can be a temple president, has to be a brahmachari or a sannyasi. Even if there is a householder who's in charge of a temple, he can't take any money for his maintenance. He has to go out and work, and he can manage the temple in his spare time. So like this, there was a lot of kind of very controversial resolutions passed. And when they were pinned up on the notice board, then the temple presidents that were there, they all flipped out and they got really angry. And so, it had been building up for a couple of weeks before the GBC meetings. And so the temple presidents, were so upset that Prabhupada agreed to have a meeting in his rooms with the leaders so that he could hear both sides and decide what was correct. So after Tamal had spoken and after the temple presidents had spoken, Prabhupada commented, he said, now, the thing is that whether one is a grihasta or a brahmachari or a sannyasi, it doesn't matter. He has to just be engaged in Krishna's service. Grihe tako, vani tako. I forget the rest of that, but the verse from Bhaktivinoda Thakur. So Prabhupada ordered the GBC now. He said you could strike out the controversial resolutions. Things should go on as they are, but cooperatively. So as a result of that, then pretty well after that, the Radha Damodar party didn't function as well as it had done previously. Tamal Krishna Maharaj was temporarily removed from his services in America, and Prabhupada sent him to China. That's a famous story. I'm not going to give all the details of it, but basically Prabhupada told him, now you either go to China and preach, or you sit down here in Mayapur and just chant. But he said, now I'm taking everything away from you. So Tamal kind of felt defeated. He conceded that he had been at the center of, some controversy. He was very sorry about that. And he kind of commiserated with Srila Prabhupada. But the situation, it had gotten to a point where one afternoon, this was before the GBC meetings, he had taken his lunch. And then he had gone to his excuse me, sorry. He had taken his lunch and then he'd gone to take his usual rest. But after 10 minutes, he rang the bell and I went into his room. And he was sitting on the side of the bed and kind of rubbing his head. And he said, you know, what is to be done? Maybe there's going to be a split. So, you know, the whole situation had become so acrimonious that Prabhupada was afraid that there would be a split in the ranks. So he wasn't at all happy about that. Then afterwards, of course, things got smoothed out when they had the meeting with the temple presidents and the GBCs together in Prabhupada's room. Prabhupada told them that, you know, resolution, revolution, no solution, dissolution, no solution. So he made that little verse up on the spot. He said that you've passed your resolutions, but the only result is that now you've got a revolution. And if there's a revolution, then everything will be dissolved. It will be a dissolution. So that this is not a solution. There's no solution. So anyway, the point that I want to come to is that afterwards, you know, when the controversial resolutions had been struck off, then on, I think, Gaurpurnima Day, Tamal Krishna Maharaj, he had brought with him about 80 brahmacharis from America. So they got a special darshan with Srila Prabhupada. He was, you know, very happy to see them. They've worked so hard, collected at least $50,000 a month was going to the BBT. Many hundreds of books were being distributed every day. So he was highly pleased with all of that preaching activity. And he was actually highly pleased with Tamal Krishna. But because Tamal had this, you know, particular mental bent that, you know, he would never concede anything. He always had to be in control of everything. So Prabhupada had to, you know, do something to crack that, you know, aspect of his character, if you like. And so when they all came for a darshan of Srila Prabhupada to his rooms, Prabhupada preached very nicely, very wonderfully about the need for cooperation. And he expressed that even, you know, we're all diverse, different personalities, but the principle that Lord Chaitanya's movement runs on is cooperation. If we're all fighting in our own midst, then how will we persuade anybody else outside to join our movement? So he said we must learn how to cooperate. So that idea of cooperation, we can cooperate if we have a common goal. So the common goal is to please Prabhupada and to please Krishna. And if we do that, then we'll see that things become very energetic, cooperative, and effective. So Prabhupada had to very carefully guide us. We were young men. He said, the problem with you Westerners is that you always like to fight. So he said, we shouldn't fight. We should put that energy into serving the Guru and Krishna. So it was a wonderful darshan, but I took it from that darshan that the key principle for ISKCON, if it wants to stay together harmoniously, push forward, development must be there. None of that can go on unless there's cooperation. We can't work on our own. We're not like Prabhupada, who could, you know, at an age unbelievably, you know, go overseas on his own with no friends, no money, no nothing, and, you know, live in the Bowery in New York for what, some months at least before he could get that storefront. We're not like that. We're not potent like that. Very few of us have that kind of capability. But if we work together, if we cooperate, then one person can be much more effective with the backing of, you know, hundreds or thousands of other devotees. If we're on our own, we can't be that effective. But if we cooperate together, then we can be fully effective, as Prabhupada wanted us to be. So what binds us together is the proper understanding that we're all ultimately servants. Nobody is a master. So no one should try to control the other, but we should find ways and means of cooperating together to execute the orders and instructions that Prabhupada has left us with. So similarly, after Prabhupada left, he was very careful in his will that the first item in his will was that the GBC are the ultimate managing authority for ISKCON, all ISKCON activities. So although we had difficulties because we were very immature, I was made a GBC in the South Seas about 6 months before Prabhupada left. And I was 26 years old. When I look back now, people like Rameshwara, he was 25 years old or 26 years old, and we were, given the whole Krishna consciousness movement to develop. So naturally, it was very difficult. We had no experience. We had no person in the movement practically that was over 30 or 35 years old. And so it was a struggle. But what kept us together was that instruction by Srila Prabhupada that the GBC should be the leading authority, or when the discussion was on what word to use, it was either supreme authority or like that. Ultimately, though, the point was that Prabhupada made a provision in his will that he hoped would keep the society together, keep the framework of the society together with a very powerful GBC body, strictly following, instructing, preaching, setting the example, and really opening up for more and more increased preaching. So that's been our endeavor, and I think that we can say that it's been pretty successful so far. We have had, people leave, deviate from the standards of what Prabhupada told us or showed us, but despite, so many so-called crises, and there are every few years or so, it seems there's some kind of internal crisis in ISKCON. But despite that, we've gone on, and by at least trying to follow Prabhupada's instructions, we've had some good success. I travel around. Up until last year, I was traveling around quite frequently for collecting funds for a project in Calcutta, a library project. And I always feel very happy, that we have so many devotees, we have so many temples, and that the preaching is still going on. Nowadays, for me, I'm 70 years old, I could go out, I feel the energy, but, there's various problems, diseases, all kinds of other things. So it's difficult to do it. But if we all work together, as Prabhupada said, we follow strictly the principles that he's given us, then we're sure to be successful, because success means the pleasure of Krishna. If Krishna's pleased with us, then nobody can defeat us. So that was Prabhupada's idea, that he wanted to create a structure which would, what's the right word? That would nurture cooperative spirit, that where we work together. Doesn't matter what background we're from. We have a common goal, and we have a common standard that will, if it's followed properly, it's sure to result in individual elevation to the spiritual world, and collectively also. So we're, what now, from 1977, what's that, how many, 40 years or something, 45 years. I think that we can say that ISKCON has largely been successful. There's a lot of areas where we're not, which we have to clean up. Varnashram, Gurukula, there's a few important self-sufficient farming communities. There's a few important instructions that we haven't yet fulfilled, but that should act as an impetus for us to work harder and bring them to the point that Prabhupada desired. So we're trying our best. And Prabhupada always said, even if you don't know something, if you try at least, to do what you think Krishna wants, Krishna will help you. He'll give you the intelligence by which you can be successful. So we're trying for that. Yeah. Now I live in Mayapur. We've got this TOVP, Temple of the Vedic Planetarium, coming up very rapidly. We've seen, this from the support from, millions of dollars have been pledged at least for building that building. And Prabhupada said when it's built, it will be like a beacon for the rest of the world. He said, I want people from all over the world to come here and experience the culture and the philosophy of Krishna consciousness by walking into this Temple of the Vedic Planetarium. So it was a big challenge. It took us many years till we finally hit some kind of a formula, and where all the proper pieces, if you like, of the jigsaw puzzle fell into place. We tried several times before, between 1977, when Prabhupada left, to probably about 2005. We had, changed the design of that temple several times over. We spent several $1 million hiring big architects and, builders of big buildings to come and work with us, but we couldn't get it right. And one design after another was accepted, rejected like this. So it was a problem. But at the right time, when Prabhupada actually wrote a letter to one of his godbrothers, I think it was, in the mid-70s, telling him what he was doing, preaching through ISKCON, and that he was going to have this planetarium in Mayapur to attract people from around the world. So that's our plan, he said. Now when Krishna will be pleased, or when Lord Chaitanya will be pleased, then it will be done. So I think that the fact that it's going up now in short order, it's a wonderful place, wonderful building. Of course, we've only done the outside of it yet. We've still got to do the interiors, which is more important. But the point is that that is a symptom or a signal that Lord Chaitanya is pleased with what we're doing. At least I feel bold enough to think that this building is going up because Prabhupada is pleased and Lord Chaitanya is pleased. Otherwise, it's not possible. So we tried and tried, but couldn't get anywhere. But when Ambarish was ready, the devotees were ready, then it happened. And even that, there's been many struggles to make it successful. But from the cooperation of devotees from all over the world, Ambarish and Sadbhuj and Braj Vilas, they've been touring around all the different areas of the world, collecting for the temple. And it's coming out successfully, but it's hard work to do so. But that's our business. If we don't work hard for Krishna, we'll work hard for Maya. Yeah, we'll get a pat from Krishna, we'll get a smack in the head from Maya. So we have to ensure that this desire of Srila Prabhupada is being fulfilled. That's our main purpose. If we're all working for that common goal, then Prabhupada will definitely extend his blessings. Lord Chaitanya will extend his blessings. And we hope that we'll be very successful. So we've still got some years left for that. But the whole experience that we've had from being with Prabhupada and then after Prabhupada's departure, I think that should encourage us. There's a lot of what we call naysayers, in English language. They have a vote. All the yays, put your hand up. All the nays, put your hand up. Yes and no. So all the naysayers, people that criticize, even though so much work is going on, then they'll have to be satisfied, with their own bitter taste of their own criticism. But those who are faithful to Prabhupada and faithful to Lord Chaitanya's desire, I'm sorry, I got tongue-tied here. Anyway, that Krishna consciousness will go all around the world. So we have to have that determination and faith in Krishna that although we're not qualified, if we work together, it will become successful. So I've been living here in Mayapur now for about 26 years, and I've seen the whole place become transformed. I won't say that I, like some of the developments that have gone on. They're not very pretty, but the temple at least is coming up very satisfactorily, and we hope that before we leave, we'll get the deities moved from the temporary temple that they're in now and moved into their new home. So that's our ambition. I think that when we do that, of course, millions of people are already coming every year. But I hope that before all those Prabhupada disciples leave the planet, that we get to see that temple with the deities installed nicely in it and see millions of people coming to see them. So let's see. I don't think this current scare of COVID-19 is going to stop us. It's certainly slowed things down. People have not been able to fulfill some of their pledges, but now things are, gradually getting back to normal. Here in Bengal, we had lockdowns and, various things that stopped the development, but now things have started coming, afresh, and we're about to hire a company, a management company, to help us to organize the facilities that we have and, give a certain timeline for when things can be transferred over from the existing temple to the TLVP. So there's many years of work. Even after we leave, the new devotees or newer devotees, the second generation, then that will be their responsibility. So personally, I'm quite grateful and satisfied that Prabhupada's wishes are being fulfilled. I don't worry about, so many breakaway groups causing disturbances. Let them do whatever they like. But for us, if we want ISKCON to continue on, if we want it to be meaningful, if we want to please Prabhupada with it, there's only one way to do that, and that's cooperate. There must be cooperation. That principle is the highest principle in spiritual life. That's what's going on in Goloka Vrindavan. Yeah, all the devotees, Mother Jasoda, Nanda Maharaj, Subal, Sudama, Radharani, Lalita Vishaka, all the residents of Vrindavan are all cooperating. Yeah, even if there's arguments between Krishna and the gopis or the cowherd boys or whatever, but that increases the sense of cooperation to please Krishna. That's the point. We have to cooperate, and the only way that we can cooperate is by understanding that we're all equally, Krishna's servants. We're a diverse group. We have different, activities. We have different views. We have different appearance, etc., etc. There's diversity, but there's a unity, is that whatever we are, wherever we're from, if we work to please Krishna and we work to please Srila Prabhupada, then the mission is fulfilled. When we lay our heads to rest at Krishna's lotus feet, then we're certain to go back home, back to Godhead. If we don't, that's our business. That's our choice. You take your seat to Thakuru. Krishna tells Arjuna, I've explained everything to you. Now you choose what you want. So cooperation is based on making the right choice. Knowing what Prabhupada wants, knowing what Krishna wants, and then saying, yes, I want to do that. I want to cooperate with Krishna. That's what cooperation means. You can't force people to cooperate. They have to be inspired and see the good that comes from working together rather than working separately. So we don't want separatists, we want cooperative attitude and activity, and then we're sure to be on Prabhupada's list for going back home, back to Godhead. If we don't, that's up to us. We can stay in the material world forever. We've probably already been here for many hundreds of lifetimes, but this is our chance now. Prabhupada said that the Krishna consciousness movement began that 10,000 years of Satya Yuga that's supposed to manifest within the Kali Yuga. That has begun with the appearance of Lord Chaitanya. I was just listening to this the other day. That 10,000 year period began 500 years ago with the appearance of Lord Chaitanya, and now it will grow. But he said, only if you cooperate, only if you follow properly. It's not automatic, it's a choice. So we've been given a wonderful choice. Stay in the material world and get your backside kicked by Maya, or step into the spiritual world, accept the devotees, work with the devotees, live with the devotees, eat with the devotees, do everything with the devotees, and combinedly together we can be successful in pleasing Prabhupada and Krishna. So I don't know when am I supposed to stop?
We still have time, but if you would like to take
we
questions,
can do some questions and answers.
That will be nice. Yeah. Hare Krishna, dear devotees, anyone has any questions, please go ahead.
Hare Krishna.
Go ahead.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Thank you so much for explaining how cooperation is so important for continuation of ISKCON as a movement and how this will please Srila Prabhupada the most. But I was just also thinking at the same time that unless we as a devotee, individually, we as a devotee, unless we go deeper in our own Krishna consciousness, to actually cooperate with one another and keep Srila Prabhupada as a center, that's going to be a challenge. So what's your perspective on that, Prabhuji?
Well, living in the material world is always a challenge. It doesn't matter, whether you're a devotee or whether you're a kami or whatever, a yogi. There's many different, sectors in human society, but the importance of working together cannot be, stressed enough. Sorry, what was your last bit of your question?
My question was, unless we as a devotee go deeper in our own Krishna consciousness, it's going to be hard to cooperate and keep Srila Prabhupada's instruction as a forefront and then keep him as a center of our life. So
I agree with that to some extent, but it's not difficult to say, that I want to be a devotee, I want to work with the devotees. I don't think that's a difficult thing to make that choice if you understand the philosophy properly. If you don't get the proper understanding, of course, then it'll be a struggle. But in the association of other devotees, then that struggle can actually, raise us up, fortify our devotional lives, and provide the impetus that we need to keep on going. Maya is always trying to keep us back. Prabhupada once in Bhubaneswar, actually, we were talking in his room, and he said, we're at war with Maya. He said, actually, not really Maya. He said, we're at war with the demons, those who would try to prevent us from becoming Krishna conscious. But he said, Maya, she's the maidservant of Krishna. So we're not at war with her. She's just there to make sure that no unauthorized person gets into Goloka Vrindavan. Yeah, if you want to go back home, back to Godhead, then you have to pass this test that Maya sets us. So we should see every situation, at least in this life, in this world, as a test of our devotion to Prabhupada and Krishna. We were in Tehran, in Iran, in 1976. And on his morning walk, Prabhupada told us, he said that every devotee must face, every devotee must face a severe test of examination. I think that was his words he used, a severe test of examination. So it's not that easy to go back to Godhead. You'll be tested by Maya, and we should see that any difficult situation, this is a blessing from Krishna. We're being tested by Maya, whether we really want Krishna or not. Yeah. So even if it's hard, I can tell you it's a whole lot harder in the material world than it is than anything that we've got going for us in the, a spiritual development. You can just see what the havoc is going on in the world right now with this COVID virus. And that's nothing to what could happen. I mean, Prabhupada himself, he was born in 1896. So during Prabhupada's own lifetime, there was the Boer War, then there was the First World War, then the Second World War, then Vietnam, and there's so many wars. This is the business of a karmi. They're always fighting each other. There's no unity. Yeah, because they don't have a common platform. The power struggle is going on. So somehow or another, we've been born into this particular situation, and we can use it to our advantage. It becomes a spur for urging us on to take more and more shelter of Krishna and the devotees, no matter what's happening in the material world. Material world is always going to be fraught with danger. And ultimately, Jama Mrityu Jara Vyadi, whether you die from COVID-19 or, whatever other ways there is of dying, everybody's going to have to die at some point or another. There was, in 1976, Prabhupada was in Vrindavan, and there was a mother and a daughter that came to see him. So the daughter had leukemia and was told that she would die soon. So the mother decided, I think her name was Antayami Dasi, something like that. They decided to come to Vrindavan so that the girl could, Manisha, she could leave her body in the Dham. She was one of the first devotees in ISKCON. She was only 14 to come to Vrindavan specifically to leave her body there. So they had a darshan with Srila Prabhupada. So as soon as they came in, the womanly nature is a bit emotional. So they started crying as they, informed Prabhupada what was going on. And I was surprised at least initially, to see Prabhupada became very stern and strong. And he told her very clearly, he said, we're all going to die. Who is going to live? He said, I will die today, he will die tomorrow, he will die the next day. But everybody's going to die. Why don't you understand? This is, the same fate for everybody. So in this way, by being a little strict with her, she calmed down, she stopped crying, and then she accepted, yes, everybody's going to die, it's not just me. And in fact, later on, a few months later, she did actually leave her body in Mathura. So whatever's happening around us, ultimately, all of us are going to die. Yeah, the death rate is 100% in the material world. So our business, whatever it may be, somehow or another, we have to link that up with Krishna conscious practice. Don't worry about anybody else, but be concerned primarily on your own development. When you feel strong, then you can go out and you can preach and help other people as well. But the main point is that Prabhupada has come here to take us all back home, back to Godhead. And we can do that. It may be a struggle, but it's nothing like what we'll have to struggle with if we don't become Krishna conscious. Yeah. So this is our attempt. Prabhupada has given us the opportunity, and we have to just accept it. And as we say, run with the ball. You're playing a game like soccer or whatever, you get the ball. So then you have to run with the ball. So Prabhupada has given us, sufficient in philosophy, sufficient practice, and sufficient association. Rupa Goswami says that the first thing about that you need in order to become Krishna conscious is sadhu sangha, association with the devotees. Without association, it's very difficult. With association, even somebody who's not very qualified, they can become qualified because they got the strength in numbers. So that's what we're trying to do there. Prabhupada set up an ISKCON, International Society for Krishna Consciousness. It's a place where people can come and they can get strength for their own spiritual quest from associating with the devotees. So that association then is the first principle. Yeah, Amber.
Thank you so much for your association and extremely detailed answer. Very grateful to you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Any other questions?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank
Hare
you
Krishna.
for your experiences. It's instructional and inspirational. Prabhu, my question is, intellectually we can accept and understand that we need to cooperate, as you were mentioning. And also you touched upon the different sadhu sangha. But my question is that when the thought does come, that could lead to doubts. If it's expressed, it becomes acrimony. If it's not expressed, it festers inside, and then either you may leave or whatever else it is. So what, on a practical level, what can one do so that whatever we've accepted it intellectually, that when the occasion arises, we can implement these instructions?
Well, we're already doing it. I mean, at least as far as I've seen, I was told that there's over 600 ISKCON centers now. We had 108 when Prabhupada left the planet. So something's being done. That's, a few hundred more Krishna conscious shelters, if you like. And that's from the enthusiasm of the devotees just, going on with Sankirtan activities, prasadam distribution, and chanting are the mainstays of our preaching. And if we just try for that, then Krishna will provide the rest. It's not so difficult. You don't have to make a few modifications maybe in your own lifestyle. But ultimately, Krishna is always available. Prabhupada's instructions are always available. If we take shelter in the sadhus, we have three authorities, Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra. So the and what's happening with the all right. So the point is if we want to make advancement, we have to get the association and shelter of the sadhus. We already have the Bhagavatam, book Bhagavatam, and we've got our Guru who shows us the way, and we have the association of so many hundreds and thousands, at least I see, here in Mayapur. If you stay in Mayapur, eventually you'll see, maybe 90% of the devotees from around the world will come to Mayapur at some point or another. So it's an interesting place to be. And especially when this new temple is completed, it's going to attract millions of people. So that should give us some enthusiasm, to preach Krishna consciousness. When you preach, then not only is the person you're preaching to hearing what you have to say, but you're also hearing yourself. So when we preach, it purifies our own consciousness. We hear the philosophy from our own lips, if you like. We're expressing our realization. And by preaching, then we can gauge what benefits, if you like, we've gained from the association of devotees, and we can pledge ourselves to work with other devotees in order to fully become Krishna conscious 100%. So it's not difficult, but we have to be active ourselves. It's not that Krishna's just going to appear, on our laps or something. We have to show him that we're serious, and if we do that, then he'll bless us, by his revelation. That means that he'll show himself to us more and more as we progress. So what was the question?
It's the practical application of what we understand at an intellectual level regarding cooperation.
Yes, well, as I say, it's practical. And the Prabhupada has given us hundreds of centers. We're never very far away from the association of devotees. So you just have to do it. There's no point in getting mental about it, as we say. You just have to, apply ourselves to the basic principles, do what we can, sell Prabhupada's books, do preaching, hold formats like these conferences, video conferences. We have now the means by which we can be in touch with tens of thousands of devotees at a time. When Prabhupada was here, there was just the telephones. Even those, Prabhupada never used them. He didn't like them. He ran this movement by writing letters. So now we've got so much facility electronically that we can simultaneously, groups of people can join together and interact together, at least virtually. And it's made it easier, if you like, to increase our preaching. Before, this virus came, and then, with all the lockdowns, we were not allowed to go out and still we're not allowed to gather in groups, etc. But through this kind of medium, these video conferencing, hundreds and thousands of people can hear the message of Krishna consciousness and express their realizations and take advantage of the realizations of others. So for us, this is not a problem. Whatever situation we're in, there's always some way that we can seek out which will help us to become more and more surrendered to Prabhupada and Krishna. But you have to have the determination within yourself to do that. Yeah. If we don't, then, we become weak, and then there's a danger of fall down. So we have to, cooperate together and help each other. We all need help. So I don't know whether that's kind of answered your question or not.
Yes, Prabhu. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
It's a choice. It's a choice. So make the choice and stick with it. Yeah. Krishna consciousness is not as hard as being, in Maya. Maya really hammers us. But Krishna uplifts us. That's the difference. Over.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Prabhu.
Prabhu, you have a few more minutes. I think one more question is in the chat. Is that okay?
Yeah, one more.
Yeah. Sachimata, please go ahead.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Dandavat Pranam. Very nice class. I was really relishing the first-hand experiences that you were talking about with Srila Prabhupada. I had a question. We've heard several times that Krishna is pleased when we follow, when our Guru is pleased. And but with us sitting so far away, yes, we it's important, like it's been said that, okay, when we follow our guru's instructions, Guruji, our Guru Maharaj is pleased. But there is no, like, nobody here to chastise us or encourage us or see what our services are. So how do we know that um, that we are doing the right service? Is it our own gratification that yes, we are doing our best, like in following the instructions, so we should be happy with that? So how do we, like, this is what my question is, like, how do we know that yes, our guru is pleased, besides like following the instructions? What are the symptoms, and like how should we feel, like sitting so far away when guru is not close up, like Prabhupada used to chastise or say, okay, you did well, you keep going. So how do we know that we are doing the right service, or we should,
Well,
like
if you're not sure whether you're doing the right service or not, then you must consult with the senior devotees. I presume you're living in a temple or near a temple, and
yes.
you're doing service there. So if you're not sure about it, then communicate. Go and see your, senior devotees, senior managers, if you're having some difficulty or struggling with your service, and discuss with them and get guidance. That's the advantage that Prabhupada has given us, that there are many senior personalities who can, literally guide hundreds or thousands of people by their example and by their words. So take advantage of whatever Krishna has provided, and that will remove, when that doubt is removed. That's what Krishna tells Arjuna, I think in the 7th chapter of the Gita. Are your doubts now resolved? Yeah, I told you everything. So the facilities that we need to become fully Krishna conscious are all there. That's what Prabhupada gave us. Temples, deities, sadhana, activities in the day for preaching, like book distribution, prasadam distribution, etc., etc. So everything is there. We've just got to take advantage of it. And if you don't take advantage of it, then who can do anything about it? It's our choice. So if you're not clear, or if you're feeling apprehensive, or if you doubt whether you're doing the right thing or not, then communicate that to somebody senior and discuss with them. Yeah. And that way, just as Arjuna, he dropped his bow. He's a warrior. He never ever was without his bow, Sharangana. But at the beginning of the Battle of Kurukshetra, just when it was to begin, he actually dropped his bow, sat down, and started crying. So from that, then all the instructions of Bhagavad Gita came forth from the lotus lips of Lord Krishna. Arjuna resolved his problems and went on with his work, which was to be a warrior, a fighter. So read Bhagavad Gita. You'll find all your difficulties and problems can be easily resolved if you're familiar with what Krishna speaks in the Bhagavad Gita, and later on what's spoken about Krishna in the Srimad Bhagavatam. We have plenty of sources to draw upon, so that those doubts, the shadow of doubt, is removed. The example is there, Krishna and Arjuna. So by all means, if you feel, a little vacant, let's say, then go and see the senior devotees, explain what you're feeling, and by cooperation, then I'm sure that you can resolve whatever issues there are and go on with your devotional life.
Yeah, thank you, Prabhuji. Yeah, there's no doubt or anything. I was just feeling that if like we are doing whatever Prabhupada and Guru Maharaj says, like we should be satisfied with that, right? If we are distributing books, we are going for service to the temple, we are reading the scriptures, we are chanting. So if we are following that, then we should be and doing our best at the same time with your circumstances and everything. So that
Yes.
should be enough. That is enough. That's what I'm asking. Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
So
Well,
that,
yes. Yeah,
okay.
we're always trying to improve, but you're right. That's,
Just keep going on that path, following like.
yes. Yes.
Yeah, okay. Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to sign off now. It's 7:45 in the evening.
Yeah. Madhupati Prabhu, you're there? Devkinana Prabhu? Looks like he's busy. Looks like they're busy, our temple president and vice president. So thank you very much, Prabhu, for your valuable association and time.
Now, where is your group? You're in New Jersey, or?
Yes, Central New Jersey, Prabhu.
I have a funny story about that. I'll finish the session with this narration. When the New York Temple was sold, the West 55th skyscraper,
yeah,
then the whole yatra in New York kind of disintegrated. So I was asked by the GBC at the beginning of 1982 if I would like to take up the GBC role in New York and try to put things back together. So I accepted it, but I said, first of all, I want to go there and see what's left and see the mood before I decide whether I want to take it up or not. So I flew from Australia, Sydney, to Los Angeles, and then I got the red ice from Los Angeles to New York. So I arrived in New York in the early hours of the morning, and there was a small group of devotees there to greet me. One of them was Bhavananda, another one was Achutananda, Murli Vadaka, and a few others. And I was quite amused when Achutananda, because he had his sannyasi clothes at that time, but he had a big jacket on. And he opened up his jacket and he had a bright red T-shirt, and with some big black letters, it said, "Where the hell is Tuaco?" He was upset that we'd sold the building that we had in Manhattan, and they ran out of money to establish some other replacement, and one place that they bought with the money from New York City was Tuaco, this house there. So Chutananda was very upset that we've been in this skyscraper building in New York, and now we ended up in this little house in Tuaco. So he had this T-shirt to express his feeling. Where the hell is Tuaco? But actually, Tuaco and that whole area now has become Krishna conscious. So anyway, it was funny at the time.
Thank you for sharing. That's the ISKCON of New Jersey. We are ISKCON of Central New Jersey. We are 40 to 45 miles apart in distance-wise. So, yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Are you building that temple in Parsippany, is it?
Yeah, that is ISKCON of New Jersey. Yeah, same. Tobacco is building that Parsippany temple because the current building is a very old house. So they got the land. They started. They got the approval, so they're working on it. Okay. But we brought a church. We remodeled it inside, so it's a beautiful place. So we're inviting you whenever.
We means where are you?
Edison. We are in Plainfield, close to Edison, Piscataway. I think Prabhupada also came some place in New Jersey. I think Long Branch or somewhere. I think.
Maybe. I don't know.
I don't remember the exact place, but I have read in, I think, Lilamut or some other place.
Central New Jersey, north of Princeton.
Yes.
Okay. Very good.
Yeah.
All right. So thank you all very much for inviting me to speak. I hope it's been of some use.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. Vancha kalpatarubhasya kripa sindhu payavacha patitana. We offer our obeisances. Aniswari Prabhu. So if you are available, you can join during 8 to 9 when Giriraj Swami Maharaj is speaking. We can take your association at that time also if you are available.
It's getting a bit late for me, so I'll sign off.
Yeah, not now, but it's in the evening. I'll send you the Zoom link for that. So if you are available, you can join for 2 minutes at the end.
All right, let's see how we go.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Prabhu.